Hello friends, I am really excited about my next project. It's a corner table for a client and there will be a lot of new techniques for me in this build. I made a prototype. This is at 3/4 scale, so it will be 30% bigger. But the idea is an asymmetric corner table. This side is longer than this side. Curved apron, which will also have a drawer in it with a curved front. That's gonna be fun. The legs will be tapered. There will be a shelf somewhere here, and I'm also going to try some inlay on this piece. Let's get started. The legs will be walnut. I have a leftover piece from that enormous walnut table I did a while ago. I know everyone's go-to wood is walnut on YouTube right now, but I'm trash, so there we go. And it will be accented by what I think is some sort of mahogany. It's reclaimed, so I'm not entirely sure. And I'll be using birch for some interior parts that won't be seen. Also, I might do like an inlaid little square of curly maple or something there, we'll see. So those are the main wood species I'm going to be using. I think I'm gonna start with the legs. I cut the legs from the outsides of the board, so I get that nice tight straight grain on all four sides. The center section, which has more of a flat sawn pattern, I can use for the front rails connecting the legs. I need two sort of flat wide pieces that will sandwich the drawer front, so this one I'm going to resaw. So this piece is what's going to be sandwiched between the two walnut rails, like that. I will cut a curve in it like that, but in order to have some material to join into the legs, I need to glue on some blocks right there. And I'm using birch because it's inside the table, it won't be seen. And I want to use these wedge shapes so I can get the grain direction more in line with the direction of the joint. If that makes sense, it will become more clear further on, I hope. Attaching a wedge shape like this is a bit of a challenge. It just wants to slide around when you put pressure on it. So what I have to do is attach these clamping blocks, like so. That will give me two parallel surfaces I can clamp across without sliding issues. I've already done this with the wedge for the other side. I have to use tape to keep these from sliding. Then I can put pressure across in both directions. Letting this dry overnight, hopefully they will stay on well enough to let me do the actual glue up. Alright, here is that part. The glue has dried. The other one is still in clamps, so while that's drying, I'm going to start working on the mortise-and-tenons that will join the legs to the back rails. And the back rails are birch because they will be facing the walls and not be visible. And before I can start laying out the joinery, I need to decide how the legs are going to be placed so the grain will look the best. To start with, I have this one, which has quite a lot of sapwood, so I know I want to put that in the back. I think I'm going to do it so when I cut the taper, most of the sapwood will get removed, which means that corner is going into the back corner where the walls meet. On this one I have a nice little detail here that I want to feature, so I think this face should be facing outwards. The grain is sloping a little bit in that direction, So I think it will look best if I cut the taper in the same direction as that grain is flowing, which means this will be the left leg. And on this one I have a nice little flowy curve in the grain that I think I want to feature. And that also works very well because the grain is sloping in the other direction here. So I can make the taper again follow the direction of the grain if I make that the right leg. So let's see, how should I mark this so I don't lose track of the orientation here. Yeah, that'll work. Alright, here is the back leg with both its mortises cut, and I think you'll be able to see when I insert this rail, the tenon comes through into this mortise. So what that means is these two tenons will meet and basically form a miter joint inside there. That is not to actually glue the miters together. It's just to make the tenons as long as possible to maximize the glue surface against the leg. But it means I have to take off 45 degrees at the end of these two tenons. Not the neatest of miters, but it doesn't need to be. These two being glued to each other is not really gonna add any strength. The point of this again is to just get a little bit more glue surface against the inside of the leg. Let's see if it goes together. Yeah, that's gonna work. I can't make the socket very deep without compromising the tenon. I can only go to that depth there, otherwise I get very short grain here that will break very easily. In hindsight, I should probably have made the tenon a little bit narrower. I can't do that now because then the mortise would be oversized, but it'll be fine this way. It just means I have to cut away quite a bit of thickness from the tail to get it to seat. Yeah, I think this method should work. I'm going to do a similar thing for the second part of the front. I have aligned the upper part with the lower, so they're flush, so to speak, along the front. And now I'm going to mark the rough position with a pencil. Then I can remove the lower section and still know where the upper is supposed to be and scribe it with a knife from there. So there I have the exact position, and these lines are the outline of the leg. So for this one I'm going to dovetail it into the top of the leg instead of the rail. Something like that. Alright, so these curves are still a little bit rough. I will finish them up with a card scraper probably a bit later. First I need to do the final part of this front apron, which is this one. It will be cut into two pieces so that it can follow this curve, and one of those pieces will be a drawer and the other one will just be glued in between here. Off camera, I made a couple of drawer guides, L-shaped pieces of birch. One of them will just get glued to this back rail. The other one will need a little bit of joinery to fit it in there, but we'll start with this one. Now I will adjust this block so that this face is parallel to the back rail, and also the block mates up with the leg back there. And now I need to align the second drawer runner so that the inside of the guide is in line with that face and therefore parallel to this guide. I have a little bit of extra length here that will tenon into this rail, and then I will make a half lap joint here that goes onto the walnut. Alright, so I have the second drawer runner seated into its mortise. I have clamped a square here so that it will stay in alignment sideways. And now I have to hold this piece in place from underneath so I can scribe the half lap joint that will connect the runner to this piece. Right, this is such a mess right now because of all the clamps to hold it together dry, but I think you can see how the drawer guide comes together with this block. The runner is a little bit proud of the walnut here, but I will flush that up with a plane after glue up. Now, if I bring you over here, you can see how this guide doesn't reach all the way back. That's because I'm going to do something fun here. I want to put in a secret drawer. If you know that it exists, you can pull out the main drawer and then reach in underneath and grab a tiny drawer here. I think I'm just going to use the leg here as a stop for the small drawer. However, here I'm hitting the inside of the front. So I'm going to make a small notch to make room for the back corner of that secret drawer. Here's what it looks like with the top stretcher in place, and the drawer front goes in like that. At this point I'm going to start rough cutting the facets that will eventually get shaped into a smooth curve, just because I'm really eager to see what it looks like. Just with those few rough cuts, it immediately became so much easier to imagine what this is going to look like. The upper structure is pretty much done now, apart from the drawers of course on the top, but that will come after the glue up. But I have to figure out how to get a lower shelf in there somewhere and come up with a way to do it so that I can taper the legs afterwards and it won't look weird. Alright, so I think I have figured out a decent way of doing this. I'm going to put a rail here and here, just along the back, not along the front. They will have grooves along them, like so, and the shelf will fit into that groove like a free-floating panel, constrained to the insides of the legs, but free to expand and contract within that space. The front will be shaped to a curve to match this, and the grain direction will just be diagonal like this. So now this piece needs resawing. And with that groove cut, I now know how thick I can make the tenon. So I will use this chisel, and with that information I can scribe lines for the mortise onto the leg. This line is the height where the top of the shelf is going to be. So just going to line that up with the top of the groove. And that will be the length of the mortise. And this mortise is quite close to the edge of the leg, but when I'm tapering the leg I will be removing material on this side, so I can't put it any further in towards the center without this piece ending up actually outside of the tapered edge. And there we go, my mortises are cut, and I almost started planing the tapers on these, but there is one more thing I have to do first. This little yellow rectangle, which represents a piece of this birch with very tight curl and super straight grain. This is a gorgeous piece of wood, and I want to take a small rectangle of that, line it all the way around with maple, inlay that into the top of the leg, right there. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. Now I am going to mark out and cut the tapers. Now with the tapers planed, I can find out where I need to put the shoulders on this lower stretcher, because the shoulders, they cannot be 90 degrees, they need to match the angle of that taper. So I'm going to clamp this in place, locate it so it lines up with the mortises on both sides, then I know that it's square across, and scribe the lines for the shoulders. I need to cut the legs now to their final length and then chamfer all the arises just a little bit, and then I can start gluing. So I'm going to do the glue up in a couple of stages just to make it less stressful, starting with the short side of the table here. And that should be it. And now I can use the legs as sort of winding sticks to see if this is in plane, and it's really close. I think that's perfect. I can't check for square on the inside corners here because of the tapered legs, and I can't check the outsides because the clamps are in the way. So I have to measure the diagonals. 807 millimeters there. And that is 807 millimeters. Pretty good. Hey, guess what? I forgot a piece that has to go in before that. Okay, it's all good. This lower shelf goes in without any glue, so it is free to contract and expand, and it has a little bit of slack for that reason as well. I'm just using a rag with some denatured alcohol to wipe out a little bit of the oil in the wood. It's very sticky, very greasy, and moistening the fibers also seems to make it cut a little bit nicer. Of course, ethanol does not make the fibers swell, so it shouldn't affect anything that way. It doesn't raise the grain or do anything permanent to the wood. But this is what the grease in the wood does. It, after a while, clogs up this very, very fine mouth. Should probably use something else than my very difficult to sharpen marking knife for that, but oh well, I am dumb.
There we go. Much nicer shading now.
Alright, so it's assembled and the front is cleaned up. I'm really happy with how that turned out. That's a really nice piece I found. And I'll call it an episode there. I have so much footage now, I don't want to abuse my computer with even more hours in the same video project. Next time we're making the top, getting the drawer assembled and fitting nicely, and putting on finish. So it's going to be done in the next part. Hope to see you there. Thanks for watching.